Welcome to this week's edition of Comedy Wham Presents. This is your host, Richard Goodwin. I'll keep the intros short and sweet this week because, as you can tell, my voice is run ragged from a full weekend of covering the 2018 Moon Tower Comedy Festival. And right before that, I had a special chance to interview two heroes from my past and current as well, Colin Mochrie and Brad Sherwood. You know them from Whose Line Is It Anyway, as well as the traveling show that they have going on, Scared Scriptless with Colin and Brad. You can find more info at colinandbradshow.com. And it's playing this week, two shows, April 27th at One World Theater in Austin. I got a chance to catch up with Colin and Brad by phone, and here are both interviews. I hope you enjoy them and try and get out and see the show. I know I will be there. First up, I speak with Colin Mochrie.
Hi, Richard. It's Colin Mochrie.
Colin, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, it's Friday, almost the weekend.
I hear you.
Could be a lot worse. Thanks for spending some time with us. I know you want to talk about the Scared Scriptless tour. Just want to give you a little information about Comedy Wham, what we do. So we interview Austin and national comedians, improv performers, actors, really anyone that's funny and does, we dig into the background of what makes the funny. Totally informal, uncensored. It's usually not a problem for you anyway, but if you need to let like a gosh darn fly or whatever, don't worry.
It may happen.
All right, fair enough. So we kick it off with kind of an icebreaker question. What is one word you would use to describe your past?
Oh. Normal.
Normal. Fair enough. Yeah, and I spoiler, I read quite a bit of not quite the classics, so I got a little bit of background there, but we'll dig into that just a little bit if we can.
Sure.
What is normal to you versus kind of what you expect the standard performer answer to be?
I had a fairly normal childhood. I wasn't traumatized in any way. I wasn't angry against the world. I was, my parents and I had a fine relationship. It was pretty a standard, sort of an old country. I was born in Scotland, and we immigrated when I was 6. And I have a brother and a sister who I'm close to. So there was nothing. What was I watching? Oh, I just watched the Gary Shandling documentary on HBO that Judge Apatow did. And as I was watching it, I kept thinking, I should have been more tortured. I could have been way funnier.
I hear it's fantastic. I haven't had a chance
it's
to
great.
see it yet.
And I was such a big fan of his, and just to, but he was tortured, and he meditated every day, and sort of embraced Buddhism, but there was just something in him that made him unhappy.
Yeah, and statistically, from the many interviews we've done, I think we're up to over 100 now. There's usually a bit of a dark period or a dark time, but there's the rare bird that just perfectly happy, and they sound quite surprised about it as well. Like, I don't know how I got in this business.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know if it's different. I should actually do research about it, whether there's a difference between stand-ups and improvisers that way. Most of the improvisers I know had fairly straightforward, normal childhoods. With every once in a while, of course, there's an exception, but nobody ever seemed to have those kind of demons.
Yeah, I guess from what I've seen in improv, a lot of the time is there's a sense of wanting to build a skill set and a performance, and a lot of the stand-ups, it's really more about the writing and and perfecting something and the timing and getting everything down rote, which is just two totally different worlds.
Yeah, and I mean, all stand-ups have a definite point of view, and they're trying to get across to the audience. Where improv is just goofy, trying to getting stuff from the audience and then just being goofy.
So it's immediate gratification, and it's always changing, right?
Yeah. But what's weird about improv is you could have a great show, but it's gone. It's just gone as soon as the show is over. If an audience member is trying to tell someone about the show they just saw, the other person would go, well, why did you find that funny? It's like, well, you had to be there. It really is an art form where you had to be there. Whereas stand-up, they can, they can hone that joke and, do it the next night with a different audience, see how it's playing, and work on it some more. It's longer lasting.
Yeah, it's that's the dichotomy is so interesting to me. And you touched on one of my sneak ahead questions that I'll come back to in just a minute. But in Not Quite the Classics, you talk about, right off the bat, don't like writing. Couldn't be any more plain. And that's,
I try to be honest.
No, that's fair. And that's usually one of the topics that we delve into is really how the writing process comes about. So it's just fascinating to hear the complete opposite. But then you do it so well. I mean, not to gush, but I really enjoyed the book.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad I did it, just to say I wrote a book. And I did learn a lot from it. The first story I wrote was the Sherlock Holmes one. Mm-hmm. And it just, flowed. It was so easy. And I thought, well, gee, I don't know why I was fighting this. This is the easiest thing in the world. And then almost immediately, it was like, my God, how do people do this? How does Stephen King write thousands of pages every year? I don't have that.
I'm not convinced that he's not several miniature authors in one large trench coat.
You know what? I think you're right.
To keep that output going.
He has minions typing in the dark of night.
But yeah, a million minions and a million typewriters. Yes, so actually that was one of the things I wanted to jump on was that actually the Sherlock Holmes story, because you talk about him going, spoiler for anyone that hasn't read the book, going into stand-up, having a stand-up experience. And one of the things that stuck with me is very much what you just said, where he comes off stage and he's talking to Watson and saying, I don't remember a thing that I said on stage. I don't remember what happened at all. And I said, that sounds like Colin Holmes a bit more than Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, it totally is. The only things you tend to remember if something has gone horribly wrong, and it has to go horribly wrong. If it just goes kind of wrong, it's just part of the evening. But it's so rare you can go, oh, I remember this line that I did that was so amazing, or this scene that was great. There were times where I'm flipping a channel and I'll see an old Who's line, and I'm watching myself going, I have no recollection of this. I have no idea where the scene is going to go. I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, and is that, you're a polished hand at it now, but, do you still ride the line between kind of exhilaration and trepidation, going into those situations, or is it pretty much just kind of muscle memory at this point?
There's, right before the lights go down and we walk on, there's a little thing of, oh yeah, we have an audience here, very excited, and we don't have a show for them. So there goes, oh, okay. And then your mind just goes, you know what, it's going to work out. We've done this. And as soon as I walk out there, I just feel totally relaxed and at home. And, whether it's working with Brad or Ryan, I'm working with people I trust. So I know that not all the pressure is on me. It's a group thing. Unlike as a stand-up, you go out, all you have is yourself. That, to me, is terrifying.
Yeah. And it's, I guess in a way it's also kind of like a Schrodinger's show, right? Either have no show or have a fantastic show, and you won't know until you step onto the stage, right? Until the audience interacts.
I'm still shocked that it actually, Whose Line got on air. I don't even know how they would pitch that show to network executives. There's 4 guys you don't know. There's no show until the end of the taping. Yeah, great. We'll take 22 episodes.
Yeah, they say Seinfeld is the show about nothing, but in the purest form, Whose Line is kind of the show about nothing. There is no premise, and until it happens, it's really crazy. It
all comes from nothing, ends up as nothing.
And there's there's bits to move it along, the hats and the props and so on. But it's kind of those are the backing band, I think, to you guys as the main performers. So it's really unexpected.
It's I tell you, it was the sweetest gig. It still is. It's like 2 weekends out of the year where we just kind of get together, and it's like you're goofing around with friends. Somehow they're making a television show out of it, and then you're off.
We should all be so lucky.
Exactly.
So you're on tour with Brad, and let's say we. I'm going to speak with Brad a little bit later and get his perspective on things. But
Yeah, there. Okay.
what
He
you
tends
know,
to lie, just so you know.
he tends to lie. Okay, so I'll just start straight out with the fact checking and then
Yeah.
try and catch
Yeah.
him up. So how does the stage show, not necessarily in terms of format, but what's the experience of taking the stage show versus the live TV show? Because, and correct me if my impression's wrong, but everything I've ever heard about Whose Line is that there are no retakes, or very rarely. It really is
Yeah.
spontaneous.
Yeah, they're never. We just shoot for 3 hours. Whatever outtakes there are usually actually end up on screen. I mean, the beauty of improv is even when things go wrong, it's kind of good for the show.
Yeah.
So we never. I mean, we've done some scenes I think that just for whatever reason just sucked, so you never see it again. But we never go, oh well, that sucked. Let's try it again. It was like, no, that sucked. Let's go into something else. So that was great. What's great about the live show is we can take more time. With television, everything has to be done in sort of 3 or 4 minute segments. So everything has to be really sticky, really fast. I think it's part of the reason why improv purists weren't really fans of the show, because it's sort of, in some ways, the worst of what improv can be. Whereas on stage, we can take more time, building characters, really exploring the situations that we're in. A lot more audience participation than the TV show, which is great because it adds just another factor of this could go horribly wrong. So it's weird to build your career on something where you're just constantly in panic mode in a way. You're just going out there, you have nothing, you get something from the audience, you bring audience members up on stage, and then you're just like 15 different parts of your brain are working at the same time, trying to make sense of the scene, trying to use a suggestion, trying to make sure the audience members are comfortable, and yet trying to get the most out of them that you can.
Yeah, it's even just you talking about it, my panic went up just a little bit thinking about it. Yeah, the duality of having no material per se. I mean, you have obviously skill set, and then you're taking it straight from the audience. I could definitely see where the live show gives you more room to play. That if something doesn't work, you can retry it or ask for a variation on it. Or is there a go-to trick, like if you're just stuck and your brain locks up? If you can divulge, your secret trick to get things rolling.
Yeah, I wish there was. It's just, I mean, the beauty of it, if this isn't working, we end it and go on to the next one. And if you're not quite feeling uncomfortable in the scene, that's when you sort of really support your partner and hope that they can bring you out of your tailspin. So that's the great thing about improv, is if you're a little lost during a scene, then there's always someone there with covering you who's got your back, and you can sort of get back on track after a little while. So, but no tricks. When I was younger, I used to drop my pants a lot just as a stalling method, but
who
those
among
days
us,
are
right?
gone.
Yeah, so you're a Scottish Canadian who did a British TV show, and you're on American tour. Do you ever get lost? For lose track?
There are times I head to the airport and I'm really not sure where I'm going until I get my ticket. But it's just been a kind of fascinating journey. I'm doing this job that I love that wasn't an occupation when I was growing up. It's taken me all across North America. Brad and I, we've also done Australia and India. We're playing the Royal Albert Hall in December, which is, I don't even know how to comprehend that, with all the British improvisers. So it's always something different, which is nice.
This is going to sound like a kind of cliche, but have you had experience with a British audience in the past versus the American audience and how they react? Is it, do you do more or less extremes, or, more or less dry humor or anything like that?
There's really not. The British audience may be a little more reserved at times, but not much. I find with suggestions, that usually is biggest difference. When we ask for stuff, we got a lot in North America. We got a lot of pop culture stuff and things like that. We're in Britain. Like I asked for a suggestion once, and I got Charles II abdication speech. I thought, oh, great! I look forward to playing with that. But that is something we would never get anywhere in North America. So what's great about that is immediately you go, oh, okay, this is something different, and I can. I actually went into the "I Have a Dream" speech, but I think I got away with it.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the first thing beyond, the meaning of abdication and the fact it was a speech. And I guess maybe you can work with that.
Yeah. The beauty is, I'm sure like half the audience had no idea what it was. And the beauty of improv is, well, this is my world, I'm making it, so everything I'm saying is right. So if you don't think this is the abdication speech, that is your problem. In my world, it is the correct thing I'm doing.
I like that. Yeah, the world within the stage.
Yeah.
Let's see. Wanted to just a note. You mentioned growing up on Louis L'Amour, and that is something I don't hear too often. I'm from Texas, so maybe it's in our blood. But I grew up reading all the Louis L'Amour westerns as well. Is that still something that comes back to you, that weaves through your persona? Because there's kind of a swinging, improvising gunslinger theme to that.
That's what I think of as I walk out.
When you swagger out.
There is. My father-in-law was a major Western Western fan, Big John Wayne, all kinds, and he passed away a couple of years ago, and I just took all of his CDs or DVDs and started watching them again and going, oh, this is why I love them. There is something refreshing about watching. You know who the bad guys are, you know who the good guys are, and the good guys usually win out in the end. And it's usually one guy against everyone and trying to get them to change their mind or something. It's I like that. I don't actually feel like one because horses scare me.
and rightly so. They're crazy beasts.
They are.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about it's formulaic, but it's comfortingly formulaic. You kind of know going in, you're going to get a lush world, and you're going to get some normal tropes, but it's going to be enjoyable. Things generally work out in the end, and if not, there's usually a satisfying death scene as well.
Exactly.
Still
and
feels
usually
like
there's a coming together of the good guys, like the townspeople and the sheriff decide to get together, and it's like, oh, okay, that's like improv. Things are going bad up to the point they work together, and then it all works out.
That's an excellent point. It immediately brings to mind Three Amigos, which is
one of the classic westerns.
The classic western, historically accurate as well.
Yes.
So let's see. So we usually kind of start to close it down with the opposite of the intro icebreaker, which is if you had one word to describe your future, or 2 or 3 words. The rules are loose.
Oh, well, I have to say my future is improvised, much like everything else. But my wife and I actually decided a couple of years ago, why don't we use the rules of improv in our life? Because they're pretty simple, and they're things we should do. It's basically you listen and you accept people's ideas and say yes to things. And so we started using that in our life and saying yes to things that may have made us maybe outside our comfort zone. And it's just sort of opened up this whole new world. We went to the Congo for 2 weeks with World Vision to do some commercials to sponsor children. And it was one of the greatest experiences I ever had, being in the jungle with these incredibly poor people who had this spirit that was just sort of life-affirming. And it was right after Christmas, so you get the North American extremes of that holiday season, and then going somewhere where it couldn't be more opposite. And in previous years, I don't know if I would have said yes to it. It was kind of just not something I thought I would do, but I'm so glad that I did. It really was an amazing experience.
So that sounds like the framework really kind of empowered you to make the decision, or took the power away from the decision so that you could make it.
Yeah. So I'm starting to say yes to. Not that I ever said no to things in show business, but to some things where I go, okay, well, this is all right. And I've done a couple of sort of these low budget movies where I'm the bad guy, which is so cool because that is certainly not something I think Hollywood would see me as. But I get a chance to do these really fun projects, doing parts I would never do anywhere else.
Yeah, that's. Do you find is there a deep-seated mean streak in you if you really dig for it?
Oh, sure. It's not that deep-seated. There are times.
Couple inches
it's really
down.
hard these days to keep that mean streak. You try to see other people's points of view and have a meaningful discussion with them. But there's just sometimes you go, no, you're an idiot. How can you believe this? It's so I still have work to do.
Well, the guy that's launching rockets to prove that the Earth is flat. I respect his option, to believe that.
It's getting so hard to be shocked now. You just every time you pick up the paper, you go, yeah. I guess that would happen. Someone would do that.
It is. I was at Mike Birbiglia's show last night, and the opening comic, Mike Mochrie, who's a local guy, was talking about it. We used to live in a world where you could just sit down and talk with people, and have a friendly conversation. And if it crossed into, let's say, politics or controversial beliefs, you just talked about it and you said, okay, thanks for the beer, and you left. And now it's it's an altercation or just on edge the entire time. And it's a shame, right?
It is. It's like someone's opinion now just defines their entire person, which, one thing can't define a person. I'd say three things can.
Yeah. We get the mean streak, and then the other two pieces.
Yeah.
Okay. I know we only had about 20 minutes, so I really appreciate. I have a million more questions, so I'm hoping to get to your show.
Excellent.
So it's the Scared Scriptless tour with Brad Sherwood, April 27th at the One World Theater and colinandbradshow.com. This is a podcast. I know I sound like I'm doing a radio ad, but hope to get out there and shake your hand and give you just an awful suggestion from the audience and see
I look forward to it.
See what you can do with it. I'll look for the most obscure English regions and see what I can dig up for you.
Please do. Please do.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Colin. Have a great rest of your Friday.
Thanks, Richard. You too.
And next up, we have Brad Sherwood.
Hey, Richard, this is Brad Sherwood calling.
Brad, how are you this fine Friday?
I am fine on a beautiful Friday. How are you doing?
That sounds exuberant. I don't know if I'm at that level, but I'm getting there. It's slowly getting there. So thanks for spending some time with us, with me today. Just a little background on Comedy Wham. We're a podcast and interview team. We talk to Austin comedians, improv actors, comedic film actors, and anyone coming through town. Anyone we think is funny, and trying to figure out what makes them tick or what they find funny. So.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad I made the cut. I fall into the category of someone you guys find funny. That's at least a step in the right direction.
It's pretty open. It could be we find them funny. They think themselves funny. But we're equal opportunity here. I'm super excited. I just finished speaking with Colin a little bit ago, and
I'm sorry.
Yeah. To be honest, he said you lie quite a bit, so I'm expecting everything
that's
to be...
because I'm going to be telling the truth about him. And
All right, so we're going to start on the premise that everything about you is true, and everything about you is a falsehood, and everything about Colin is true. We can work from there.
Yes, fake news. You know how that works.
Oh no, yeah, we got into that topic as well. Maybe we'll touch on that. So we like to kick it off with kind of an icebreaker question. What is one word you would... go ahead.
Go ahead.
What is one word you would use to describe your past?
My past, one word. Okay. Isolated, I think. I was an only child, and we moved around a lot, so I didn't have a lot of friends. So the TV was my friend.
And a good friend it is.
Yes.
Very, very reliable.
Yes. It helped raise me, and then it helped feed me. So I guess.
Can it go full circle? I guess where can we go from there? I guess it
yeah. Well, now I mean, mostly I do live performance stuff, which is has come to be because of our stuff on TV. But I don't do a lot of TV stuff so much anymore, just because I'm so busy out on the road, and I love doing that.
Yeah, and of course you're doing the Scared Scriptless tour, which I'm hoping to get out and see on April 27th at One World Theater in Austin and colinandbradshow.com. I know that sounds like an ad, but just getting the info out there. Yes, super excited to see it. Of course, I'm a big fan of Whose Line Is It Anyway, past, present, and future. And so I kind of grew up on you guys as well, forming my view of what's funny in the world, and especially what's funny in the improv world. So that was fantastic. Well, yeah, one of the interesting things about you guys and about your show, on this podcast, we focus a lot on the writing process and, what, for example, stand-up comedians go through to get everything nailed down and perfect and, tweaking the timing of everything. And all that goes out the window with the kind of the work that you do. How do you find that? Did you find that a challenge? Is it freeing? What is that experience like for you?
I've sort of likened improv because it is the process is so drastically different than stand-up. Improv is more of like a mental martial art. You get good at doing it and practicing the martial art, but when you implement it, you are sort of on your own. It's like you can be in the gym and learn how to throw punches and karate kicks and all that stuff, but when you're out in a dark alley having to protect yourself, everything you learned is now an instinct that you are using to defend yourself because you don't know where they're coming from and how and what they're going to do. So, a stand-up's act is a written monologue that they try out in front of an audience, trial and error, and tweak it and sort of get it beat by beat down to the perfect, funniest version of that written material. And we don't have that. We are literally flying by the seat of our pants and using, just our wits and our instincts comedically to take these situations and, dig our way out of them in the funniest way possible. And it kind of goes counter to the way people work in any other artistic process. Most people get good at what they do by practice, repetition, and muscle memory. If you're a piano player, you practice scales until you can do it without even thinking about it. Sure. But imagine practicing a scale on a piano and then telling yourself, you're never going to do that scale exactly that way the next time. It's always going to be a jazzy riff that you're going to do a different sequence of notes.
Yeah,
and that goes counter to how everybody learns everything in the world.
Yeah, the next time you sit down at the piano, all the keys are changed. And
right.
Different
yeah.
colors.
You have to play them facing away from the piano, and then one time you have to play with one hand and one foot. So it constantly people think, and one of the most common questions is, do you have sort of this sort of bag of tricks that you default to, or whatever your suggestion is, you get a plumber, you're kind of going to go towards this sort of rehearsed sketch that Colin and Brad have come up with? No, it never works that way. People are always trying to find, the trap door for the magic trick that we don't actually make an elephant disappear. We actually pull the elephant out of our imagination every night in a different way.
Yeah, so it's and you outed me. I did ask that very question. Yeah, is there a go-to trick? But when you get into that desperate moment of there's absolutely no connection that you have to the topic, and you've just got to create on the fly. Drop into your point, your martial arts pose, and get ready for battle with the suggestion.
And the part of that question that you just sort of phrased is when you fall into that sort of desperate moment where you don't have something. That, if you're a true improviser, that moment is happening throughout the show every moment. Like, I say something hilariously funny, the audience laughs. By the time they're done laughing, it's a dry erase board, and we are starting over from zero. Yes, we have a premise going in a scene where we're two pirates and we're being attacked by penguins. So, but that's all we have. It's still now what do we do? Every time you say a line, every time he says something, I now have to say now what and come up with something to respond to that. It's more like your actual life, except that it's funnier. Because in your actual everyday life, you are responding, you are improvising to everything that is hurled at you by all of the people that you talk to. You don't have pre-planned things. So we are just using the natural brain function that everyone uses all day long. We've just made it more entertaining. So, that'd be like going to someone and saying, hey, someone came up to you and asked you what you want for breakfast. You didn't have a pre-planned idea? No, I went crazy. I read the menu and decided on waffles today. It's like that. It's not such a magical thing that our brains are doing. The magic and why it's worth the price of admission is that we just have the instincts and ability to choose a funny option out of the billions of responses that could happen in any given situation on any given day between two people.
Yeah, so that makes total sense. And the breakfast menu analogy is interesting because I would sit down and I might have a little bit of back and forth over do I want the eggs or the breakfast taco? Of course, this is Austin, so you have to have a breakfast taco.
Yes.
And I probably would be fine with either choice and go about my day. But throw me into the same improv situation and like Colin said, panic instantly and starts rising up in my mind. And I'm curious, you said you have the skill set and you developed the skill set, but is there still that moment of uncertainty between before the suggestion flies or before the laugh stops, about what you're going to spring into next?
Well, I mean, that's the hardest thing to sort of get across to people. Our entire show is a moment of uncertainty. We have walked out on stage, charged people money. We have the confidence that we are going to make people laugh. But the entire show is a moment of uncertainty. All we've written down a menu of, we're going to play these 7 games tonight. That's all we have. We don't know what they're going to be about. We're bringing people up on stage. We don't know who they're going to be, what their personality is, any of the suggestions that we're going to be getting. So, and we don't want to try and, corral those suggestions into a well-worn groove anyway, because sort of as purists, you want to actually improvise. What we get excited is when we go down rabbit holes that are so far afield from anything we've ever trod upon before. That's where we get our sort of thrill. That's the skydiving element that we thrive on. And because we can do it and have done it for years and years and years and years to much success, mm-hmm. Why would we want to default to some other thing? Like that whole thing that you probably saw the Richard Simmons episode with Colin doing the jet ski thing at some point.
Sure,
it's like one of the most classic. Like that was not planned, and he got like one of the funniest responses ever in the history of Whose Line. Why would you not want to just relax and try those instincts and trust them every single time, as opposed to try and recreate that Richard Simmons jet ski moment? It's kind of, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, which is not a series of words you would ever put together in daily life.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. These are someone coined the phrase that improv is sculptures in smoke. That they're there and then they're gone and never to be seen again. And you can't sit back on your laurels, because you're only as good as you are clever on the night you show up and walk out on that stage. And you have to have a huge respect for the fact that this is kind of a magical thing you do, and you have to use your skill set every time to the top of its ability. You can't really phone in improv. You can't, say REO Speedwagon is coming to town. They're going to play the song "Keep on Loving You" for 12,000th time, and so they can kind of go on autopilot, playing those notes, singing, and blah blah blah. But we can't go on autopilot.
Yeah, there's not an off-key fan carrying the song the whole way.
Yeah,
Uh,
an
for,
improv show is kind of like harnessing a wild animal. It's never truly in our control.
yeah,
We are trying to conduct a symphony of moments that are happening for the first and only time ever, and it's our job to instinctually make them as funny as we can, and then
and
never do it that way again. Go
right.
ahead.
No, that's fine. And what I what amazes me, what I love about it, is you're talking about the most death-defying, figuratively speaking, death-defying high wire act, and something that they change the wire every time, like I said, or the piano attacks you. But what I hear is passion and excitement, and you can't wait to do the next one. Not, like when you mentioned the skydive, and I haven't ever done it. I plan to someday, at least once. But
I have done it once, and it was very fun.
and so, in the skydive, the thrill for some people, for me, would probably be when I landed to be, the
Yeah.
relief. When you do the show, and things are coming out spontaneously, is the thrill there in the moment, or is, when you've wrapped a sketch or wrapped the show, is it the thrill and satisfaction of, we nailed that and we can keep on going?
The thrill is in every moment of the show, and the satisfaction is in every laugh that you get. Like, people that do comedy, especially performing it live in front of an audience, are, laughter vampires. That's what we feed upon. We thrive on it. That is what makes us want to do the show over and over again. That is what makes us want to fly to a town and get onto a stage and be funny. Like, that is. Yeah, I mean, we're little hamsters. That's our hamster food. That's what if the laboratory was feeding rats laughter and they had to keep going back to the little water bottle to get their laughs, that would be the impetus. And they would be, the comedy hamster would be standing there at the water bottle, just drinking from it the entire time,
Just smacking that button.
Yeah. I mean, there's a compulsion. There's whatever it is about laughter. That becomes sort of addictive to people that do comedy, and it's addictive to people that fall into a laugh accidentally and make their friends laugh. They love it. It's such a I think we're social creatures, obviously,
Sure.
and that is such a one of the most rewarding forms of validation that you can get from the people around you, your tribe, whatever it is. It's the sharing of. You did something to elicit this warm response that fills them with joy, and then they echo it back to you with the sounds of their laughter. It's kind of it's a magical transference, not to sound all metaphysical, but it's a sort of an interesting transference of positive energies between two people that can be absolute strangers. So for them to give me their laughter and me to give them the brain candy to make them laugh is such a, it's like a mutual brain massage.
Yeah, that which actually I think you can get downtown for a pretty decent price.
Good.
At one of the under the shops. And I think the way you describe it is so interesting because in this form, especially the live show, you have both the crowd, social nature of it, like you said, the feedback loop, but then you have the, for that one individual or that other individual that gets to ask their question or their suggestion and get it out there and get their personal version of kind of, like you said, the brain candy created and give it on stage. I mean, it's got to be so rewarding on both sides of the equation.
Live performing in general, whether you're doing musicals or theater, I mean, it's so immediate. When you work on TV shows or movies, you are doing art by committee, a big group of people creating, writing, and piecing together scene by scene this collaborative effort that then, you will then get the response of in reviews and people writing and talking about how much they like what you did. But it's a twice removed process.
Yeah.
And with theater and live comedy, it's instantaneously. You are in the room with people that want to hear what you have to say, and you are saying it and eliciting this great back and forth between you. I mean, it's not like a religious thing, but it is a communal sharing of an experience that, like concerts. It's just some bands may not be as good in concert as they are on their album, but to see a band live and to be in a group of people all dancing and singing and swaying to music is really a fantastic experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I can sing horribly to something that I love in the shower, and then do the same thing in a crowd of people, of course, with more clothes on, and yeah, it's completely different. It's
and it's different creatures too. Like, there are a lot of musicians who love working in the studio and recording albums, and they hate going on the road. And then there's other musicians that hate recording albums, but they have to so they can go out on the road and want to perform. And it's the same with actors. Some actors don't want to perform live in front of human beings. They want to work in a movie and a closed set and like get these tortured little moments bit by bit, sort of building a mosaic, but wouldn't want to speak in front of people. And then there are, people that only want to be on the stage. And that sort of, it's like there's so many different ways to be a performer, and some are for true extroverts, and then others are for like tortured artist souls. So I'm more of the true extrovert on stage, not in my real life, but boy, I am a ham sandwich out on stage.
It's interesting because you draw that comparison, between the different types of performers, but then see that same kind of duality or dichotomy within yourself in your own life. I don't have a whole lot of time. I want to touch real quickly on impressions. I mean, anyone that knows you knows that's something amazing that you do, and that's a whole topic of its own. But I'll go for one area of that. What is the impression that you came up with rather, that was either the most surprising success or just one you never could nail? It always got away from you.
Okay, so two things. I did impressions, sort of like the purest of improv. I did not have a bag of impressions that I walked into, Whose Line with. That sort of was discovered. They said, "Hey, we want to do some musical stuff. Can you do Bob Dylan?" And so I tried it, and the producers laughed, and they're like, "Okay." And then, what about like the B-52s? And so I tried it, and it sounded exactly like Fred Schneider. So I would say Fred Schneider and Bruce Springsteen are probably the two I do the best of these things that I never knew I did. I used to do the Muppets. Like when I was a kid, I used to like doing Kermit the Frog. So that was like as far as I ever went into the world of doing impressions, was that I was just trying to entertain myself doing Kermit the Frog. But the hardest one, I would say the hardest one that I've always like had a hard time holding on to is Willie Nelson. The producers have teed me up to do that one a couple of times. And especially, if it's not just the song Always on My Mind or On the Road Again, I can't hear his voice to stand about the singing of it. It's hard for me to sing some other melody that's either a ripoff or in a totally different style. Sometimes they have Wayne and I do two characters, but in some completely divergent style that isn't one of the. So, like trying to do ska with Willie Nelson's voice is just really hard for me. Whereas other ones, I have an easier time crossing over genres and holding on to the essence of that person. But yeah, I never like sat down and said, "Oh, I could do this and this and this." This was just like a latent ability that was discovered actually by the producers of Whose Line to further show how unplanned my career is.
But that's fine. That's what being adaptable is about. You couldn't pick further apart, I think, than the ball of energy that's Fred Schneider, and then the just smoke, just aged smoke, mellow. Willie
exactly.
Nelson. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, we're running up on 20 minutes here, and I want to make sure that you have time for the rest of your day. I'll start to wrap it up with our closing question. So you might have guessed,
sure.
I asked one word to describe your past, and we'll flip it around, say one word or words to describe your future.
Well, I would say bright. I think I have a bright future because I'm going to be able to continue to get old and do live improv because, Colin and I established ourselves out there. So, even if we have to start playing smaller theaters or this or that down the road, I'm always going to love doing this because traveling may get old, but the actual performance and live show that is always different doesn't get old. So the thought of continuing to get to pay my bills for as long as possible, doing what I love to do, is just a bright future for me.
Yeah, doing what you love, getting paid for it with a pretty much open-ended future. I mean, that's not a lot more.
Yeah, movie stars, they're always worried about getting old and having to redefine themselves, and actresses in particular go from being the heartthrob to now they're possibly the grandma. That's a tough transition for people that have been always marketed as the cute, sweet ingenue. And I don't have to remarket or redefine myself to be funny on stage in front of a live audience. That's who they know me as, and that's what I'm selling, and that's what they want to buy. So it kind of takes that edge off of the sort of the shark that always has to move forward in the TV and movie part of showbiz. Like, when does an action figure have to hang it up, and start trying to redefine themselves in sort of gritty dramas instead of the Die Hard genre or the Mission Impossible genre.
Yeah, it's got to be freeing, and if you have I love your analogy of the martial arts. And when I see you come out on stage, I'm just going to think about you dropping mentally into a martial art combative pose. But yeah, it's got to be freeing to know that you have those skills to support it for as long as you can get out there and make it up.
Yeah. As long as my mind is working, and because I use it so much, I'm not fearing as much some of the degenerative brain issues that people get when they get older, because I don't think anybody's using it quite as effectively as I am on a regular basis. So it's like the New York Times crossword puzzle on steroids to keep your synapses firing in a live show, synthesizing all this information.
I can't imagine, and to do it night after night. Well, it's been really fantastic, Brad. I'll just say once again, for those listening to this episode that comes out this week or in a couple of days, the Scared Scriptless Tour, Colin Mochrie, Brad Sherwood, April 27th at the One World Theater. I think tickets are still available, not a whole lot. I hope to get out there and see things go crazy in the best way. So.
Yes, and if you do come to the show, then stop by backstage afterwards and say hello.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you so much again, Brad, and hope you have a great Friday and the rest of the weekend and many shows to come.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Good talk to you.
Thanks. You too. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to the special edition of Comedy Wham Presents with Richard Goodwin. Get out and see Colin and Brad at colinandbradshow.com and the Scared Scriptless show April 27th at One World Theater. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Slacker, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, and stay up to date at comedywham.com and at ComedyWham on Twitter and Instagram.